Okay, guys, and here we are with car number 3 of the Mr. Mo appreciation build. And this one is one that, for regular viewers of the channel, you've seen on here more than once, as this might be the third or fourth one that I built on the channel, maybe the third one. But I've built a couple of them on here before, so you guys, if you want to see all the ins and outs of building this one, you can watch this video or this series, or you can watch one of the other series. I'm not going to go into every last thing on building this car in this series, as I've done it plenty of times on the channel before. But I am going to give you quick glimpses as to the progress of this particular car, while we focus on the two GTOs, which are the two new builds on the channel. So if you're familiar with this car, this is the Monogram 1985 Fiero GT, which is basically the same body style as the 1984 Fiero Indy, which is why we're converting this from an 85 GT to an 84 Indy. Now, overall, this is an excellent kit from Monogram. The molds are really nice. It was released back in 1984 for the 85 model year, and then re-released back in 2004. So they are out there if you want to find one. They're getting a little pricey because they're getting a little harder to find, but they are out there. You can find them all over eBay. Now, what I want to talk about is just a couple of the faults in the body and some of the things we're going to have to correct as we're working on this. The first and most obvious one is this right here. You see that? That indentation in the rear body work, that's just part of the mold process. It's in every single one of them. And luckily, it's not on this side. Usually, I've had some that's had the same molding error on both sides, but this one apparently is just this one side here. So we're going to have to fill all of that and reshape that whole rear and clean that up. Now, it's got minimal flashing, nothing really worth talking about, as it is a very clean, very nice mold. This is an original 1984 edition, as I stated on the first episode of this series. The 2004 edition has a slightly darker red plastic, but unfortunately, they're both red. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening up the signal lights, opening up the grills, intakes. We're going to open up the underside of the front bumper, as that's where the car really takes its air in from, and to be accurate, you have to have that open, whereas the model just has this completely sealed. It's got mold lines going across the front underside of the bumper here. It's got some mold lines here on the B-pillars. Nothing major. Nothing's going to be a real pain to deal with. Now, one of the interesting aspects of this car is that in the build, they give you two different choices of the quarter panels. Now, we're going to go with the stock quarter panels, as we're building a stock Indy. But there's an aftermarket side scoop that also comes with the kit, so you can modify that a little bit. But the weird thing is, these quarter panels on the driver's side of the car have an air intake. On the passenger side of the car, there is no air intake from the factory. But for some reason, when Monogram made this kit, both quarter panels have an air intake on them. So if you want to build an accurate car, right now I've got my Squadron Green putty in there, just waiting for it to harden so I can start sanding that down and seeing if I have to reapply a second coat. Because every time you use this putty, it shrinks a little bit, so then you'll have to go over it again. So we're going to let that sit and dry as we're filling in that air intake. This here, we're just going to fill that in completely, smooth it all out, and then we'll have a smooth panel, as I've done previously on the channel on the other builds I've done of this car. So those are the plans for the body, and since right now we're concentrating on the bodies of all these cars, here's a rear deck lid. We got to do a little bit of cleaning up here where it came off the sprue, and then again, nothing really major to talk about here. The rear bumper, just a little cleanup on the sprue attachment there. And nothing else really to talk about there. This is all in pretty good shape. Now, we won't be cutting out the reflectors, As what I like to do with that is put a little bit of bare metal foil in there. Put a little red, to me, a transparent red in there. And then we have our reflectors. And these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces are comprise the entire body of the 85 Fiero. So right now we're going to start filling this part of the body in. Now, I did use my Squadron Green putty here on the quarter panel, but I also have my Perfect Plastic putty, which I really like. I wanted to use the Squadron because I hadn't really used that much, and I've had this thing for years, and I just curious as to whether it was still any good. And it is. But this is a solvent-based putty, so the smell is not pleasant. Now, the Perfect Plastic putty is water-soluble, which makes it really easy to work with, has low shrinkage rates, and really fills nice gaps. I mean, it does a really good job. So I think we're going to be using that for the rear portion of the body here. So let's get started on that. We're going to put a little putty in it. Then we're just going to fill this gap. If this stuff is still good. I've had this also for a very long time, so I don't really know what kind of shape it's in. Now, the good thing about this is that you can use water to reactivate it, which is both good and bad. If it starts to harden up on you. So I'm just gonna, first thing I want to do is protect the side marker light, which I will do by just simply putting a piece of tape over it so that we don't get the putty in all that detail and ruin that. So we don't lose that detail. And we'll take our putty and we'll just apply it into the fender there. We may have to use some water. This may have dried out a bit. Alright guys, while that's drying, we're going to work on a little bit of the mold line issues that we have here. Because they're very minimal. And what I like to use for that is my Citadel Tools mold line remover. This is a really cool tool. Basically, it's just a flat blade that you can just scrape along the plastic and just basically scrape the mold line right off. And then you can go right in with your whatever sanding medium you like to use and just clean up any of the marks that are left there. This is a really cool tool, and it works really well for removing the mold lines. Now, you can do this easily with the back of your X-Acto knife, or, you know, or just sand them down. But I got this as a gift, and I really like using it because it really does make removing the mold lines really easy, with minimal impact on the rest of the surrounding surface. The blade is shaped, all of these various different shapes allow you to get into all different angles and directions. And I've yet to find one that I can't reach with this tool. Now we're going to go over it with some sandpaper and just clean all of this up. Make sure we get everything off. Okay guys, the next step in the body modifications after we cleaned up the body is we're going to start opening it up and adding all of the various air intakes that go into the front end. And we're going to start that by just using our Tamiya masking tape to measure out exactly where we want to open the lower air intake that feeds the radiator. And I'm just going to do that by measuring it out and matching it to the intakes that are on the nose. And so that everything just lines up together. So I'm just going to lay some tape down, measure everything out, and get ready for some cutting. Okay, now that I have the area that I want mashed off and I know exactly where I want to cut, I'm going to start using my scribing tool to just start scribing the area that I want to cut off into the plastic. I'm just going to keep going until I cut through, much in the same way as I'm going to do the rest of the cuts. It's pretty much the same procedure. Just keep scribing till you start scraping the plastic off, being very careful to follow the tape so that the lines come out as straight as possible. And you just keep scribing till you break through, and then after that I'm going to use my hobby knife to continue to cut through the scribed lines and then just snap the piece of plastic off. When cutting out the lower intake, air intake under the front bumper, it gets a little tougher on this forward edge here because that butts up right against the intakes here or the way it's molded. So it's a little tough to cut that out, but if you just score it enough, cut along the other sides, you can just snap it right out and get your opening right where you want it. Now it's going to take a bit of cleaning up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay guys, I'm in the process of cutting out the air intakes in the nose, and I just thought I'd describe my process for doing this. It's a little bit lengthy, so I'm not going to film it all, as I've done it before. But I just thought I'd go over it really quick and let you guys know how I do this. The first thing I like to do is I like to scribe along the upper and lower edge here until I just about break through the plastic. And the minute that I pop right through, I scribe a little bit on each corner, keeping in mind that this side is rounded while this side is straight. And I just like to follow along the curved edge until I weaken that. And then what I do is I come in with my drill, my pin vise, and I just drill through it, as that's going to help to break that corner. Once I break that corner, it's a simple matter of just popping the piece out, because it's already scribed on the other end, so it'll just snap right off on where it's scribed. And then it's just a matter of cutting through it. Once I drill the hole in, weakens it enough that we can just pop that piece right out. You see that? And then where it's scribed, you just pop it right out of the center. And there's our second hole. Now we have to do quite a bit of cleaning up on it. As you can see, I've already cleaned up this side. And now I'm going to start on that side, which just involves a lot of filing and cleaning up everything. So we'll be back when that's done. We're going to go over all the body modifications that we've done to the Fiero. First thing we're going to start with is our front end. As you can see, still going to have to clean that up a little bit, but for the most part you can see the signal lights are opened up. So is the front nose intake. The underside intake is opened up and cleaned up. You can see that's looking just like the real car. I filled in all of the damage from the sink marks in the body from the bad molding of this car. And deepened all of the panel lines just to make sure that they stand out and nothing gets lost during paint. This really is a really nicely molded model. I really have to give it to Monogram. Oh, forgot to mention, I've also removed all of the mold lines. There really weren't that many to work on, but you can see here that they're completely gone. So this body is now ready for a good cleanup and then primer. Once we apply the primer to the body, we'll see whether we'll have to do any more work back here, which we won't know for sure up until we add the primer. Okay, now we have the quarter panel, which has the air intake filled in, because as I stated before, the Fiero has an air intake only on one side of the car. So that's got to get filled in so that we'll have a nice smooth body panel there. This has been cleaned up. All the sprue nubs have been removed. The rear deck lid has 3 points here where you're supposed to drill out so that you can make the mounting holes for the over-the-roof scoop. Now, what that did was that it left small nubs on each side, on this side of the hood, which would have shown up as an imperfection in the paint. Once it's painted, you would see the mark of these holes on this side. So I had to smooth it all out so that when we lay our paint, we'll have a nice smooth rear deck lid. So you're going to be on the lookout for that, because all of these small holes, which are not drilled all the way through, will leave marks on the other side. So you sand it down and that'll clean it right up. Now we have the underside. We removed all of our injection pin marks. There were 4, and now they're gone. So this is ready for primer. So that is everything that we need to do on the Fiero before we send it to the paint booth. So now it's time to get painting. So I'm going to end this video right here, as this ends the final body portion of the triple build. And, well, maybe we'll start putting together some parts. Maybe we'll start building the engine blocks, as those are going to have to be painted on these things before we go to paint the bodies. Got to decide what the next step's going to be. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Just a quick video to show you guys the progress on the bodies of the 3 cars. Now I've got to clean up this mat because I've got plastic shavings anywhere, and that's a mess. So I got to clean all that up so we can get started on the next portion of this build. Which, you know what? I think I am going to start assembly of some of the larger components or sub-assemblies so that we can just take everything to paint at once and get moving on this build. Alright, so that's it, guys. I'm going to go. Remember to like, subscribe. We're getting closer to the 2,000 subscriber mark. Come on, guys. We can do it by the end of the year, which is only a couple of weeks away. So we might make it. So I'll see you on the next one.